This is Holding Court with Patrick McEnroe.
All right, so let's get to the men's tournament. You were talking about Novak, and I mean the biggest thing to me going into the whole swing in Australia was how the crowd was going to receive him. It seemed to be extremely positive from him winning the warm-up tournament in Adelaide, but being there, we still don't get the same feel as when we broadcast from Bristol. What was it like? I mean, what were the people on the street, the people at Melbourne Park saying about Djokovic being back and then, of course, going on the run where he, totally dominated the tournament?
Yeah, I think Novak felt very supported. I don't think anyone's ever gone back 12 months later. I mean, obviously there have been serious traumas in tennis. Just go no further than Monica Seles, what happened to her. That's the worst ever. But, this was a really difficult thing for everybody. Novak, the tournament, and obviously Novak brought it on himself by the choices he made surrounding the vaccine for COVID. But still, it was really messy a year ago. So to come back and kind of go back to the scene of all the embarrassment and being deported and being in that detention center and, being humiliated, brought back to the airport to leave under the threat that maybe he couldn't come back for 3 years. So we don't even know the amount of stress he was really feeling internally. And then he had the hamstring strain. So it was one of the most extraordinary runs to win a major, even though he's won. Can you help me remember? It's 21 now, right?
22.
22. See,
they're tied. He's tied with Rafa. He and Rafa have 22, and
Right.
Rogers retired with 20. And
I had the worst
Serena,
time
how many does Serena have?
23.
Pam?
She retired at 23.
No hesitation there.
Yeah, but
I'm
telling you, getting all the numbers straight, Patrick,
know.
and being like I didn't do much homework going into this. But the point is,
You don't need to do homework for this.
I think this was the most special one for him. Even though Australia's been like his, Rafa's version of Roland Garros, this was unbelievable. The mental strength, and that's what I've learned. And I played with Martina. Martina left no stone unturned, and that's, she would look at everything from nutrition she looked at things that were 10, 15 years she was ahead of the game. I feel like Novak's the same way, and he's also extraordinary talent. But he just does everything right. From data, he's got data coming in on how to play. He's got, the right kind of recovery science that I don't think other of us will hear of in 5 years. He's doing it all now.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think you're right about, you look at the scores and, he lost one set the entire tournament, was so dominant. But I think we saw his reaction, the emotional side, which I think you're spot on about. Obviously he had to deal with the slight injury early on in the tournament, which he navigated, which he's been the master at doing that. But the reaction after he won, he still had that typical Novak thing, like, I'm sticking it to everybody. I did, but then when he went to his box, to his coach, his family that had been there. And by the way, remember his dad had the whole brouhaha with, taking a picture with some guy with a Russian flag, the Putin flag. He wasn't even there the last couple of matches. So that had that had to not be that easy for Novak, just that, had to deal with just yet another thing. But when he went up to his box and you saw the emotion come out of him, I think, to me, that's when it hit me about how much, it took out of him the entire trip down there. Forget about the tennis part.
Yeah, because, look, any major for the 2 weeks, you keep so much of it, you just keep it contained, and you just go day to day to day, and then finally when it's over, it all spills out. But there's nothing greater to spill out than Novak's 2023 Australian Open effort, given everything that he'd been through. And again, brought on by his own choices. Because one of the things I did hate was it was a little bit of gaslighting. It was a little bit of like, Novak had nothing to do with this. He was just sort of like the victim, right? He wasn't the victim. He was like in charge of this. He decided to not trust the science, and he paid the consequences. But of course, you still take in the human side, trying to compete, trying to win a major, win 7 matches. I mean, he was unbelievable. I will always remember that run to that title.
And it looks like he's still going to be paying some of those consequences, at least in the immediate future, because it doesn't appear that he's going to be allowed to come in for Indian Wells, the BNP Paribas Open, and, of course, the Miami Open, those events coming up. So let's look ahead a little bit, Pam, before I let you go. And I appreciate you figuring out how to get on from Mexico and do this while Donna is preparing for the rest of the tournament there. Swiatek, I mean, still looking good despite losing in Australia. Maybe not quite as dominant as she was. It'll be interesting, actually, how she does in this next 2 months, because that's when she really went on a tear, just dominating those two, the spring double, the sunshine double, as they now call it, and of course then on the clay. Do you see the same type of domination from her on the women's side? And then I want to hear what you think as well about the men.
Well, Swiatek seems to have a pattern where she go through a stage where she'll dominate. I mean, her scores are ridiculous. She'll go through like 12 sets in a row and no one will get past 6-3. A little bit reminiscent of some of the great champions of yesteryear. But then she'll like, you got to hand it to Krejcikova, who's figured out how to beat Swiatek twice in the finals in the last 6 months. Ostrava back in the fall in the Czech Republic, and then also more recently in the Middle East. And by the way, nobody watches more tennis in person than Krejcikova. So take that as a lesson for junior players and everybody around the world. I think you've got Rybakina, you've got Sabalenka, Krejcikova is starting to come back. If we can get one or two more of the women who've won one major and then kind of backed away, if they can kind of rise the way Krejcikova has, women's tennis can suddenly get really competitive again. I think going into the French, Swiatek's going to be the heavy favorite on her favorite surface. But I think I can see it's not going to be as one-sided, but Swiatek's definitely the dominant number one, and somebody's got to try and chase her down. And I feel like a few are starting to show the chops to do it.
Well, two things I want to respond to about that. Number one is you're 100% right. Fans that are not hardcore tennis fans want to see players that win multiple majors, right? So whether it's an Ostapenko or Krejcikova, even on the men's side, teams disappeared since he won his. Medvedev hasn't been the same. He's starting to come back a little bit. They want to see players that have done it, not just once, but multiple times. So we'll see what happens on the women's side there. Here's what I want to ask you about the women. You didn't mention any Americans. So there's Coco Gauff, there's Jess Pegula, who's obviously right there at the top. You got Collins, you've got Anisimova. Just give me sort of an overview of where you see the American women as a whole at the moment.
Well, I think the two you mentioned first, Pegula and Gauff, lead the way. Huge credit to Pegula in every way to figure out how to get three in the world. She's got incredible ball striking, but she doesn't, on face value, when you watch her play, you're like, how did she get to three in the world? And then you watch her week in, week out, her professionalism. And also, I loved what she wrote, her own essay about her own journey and the struggles that her mom had such a serious health issue. So she's been doing all this with a major family health issue going on with her mom and playing doubles with Coco Gauff. So one of the best, it's a throwback. She actually entered all three events in Australia. She lost early in mixed, which probably helped. I give a huge amount of credit to Pegula. Also comes from a family of great wealth, but she works hard. You wouldn't know it. Coco Gauff, I heard you and Mary Jo on your podcast not that long ago discuss. She knows obviously golf a lot more than I do. I think we're all concerned about whether the forehand's just going to be never quite good enough. Because to get to the top with a forehand that breaks down is not that easy. It's happened before. Sanchez Vicario got to number one, but it's not that easy. So she's got to figure out how that shot's going to stand up under pressure. I feel like the serve's gotten a lot better. So Coco Gauff, I love everything about her. It's just that one question I have on the forehand side, which is crucial, as you know.
Holding Court is powered by Mudhouse Media.